Hello. Hello, everyone at home. So I think we're about to start. Hi, Jonathan mentioned that you were asking more about intellectual and theoretical understanding. Would you like to bring up the topic? Because these terms are quite difficult in English.
Yes, I think there was a discussion with the international on one of the Saturday, on a Monday one, that I didn't really get that the distinction between theoretical knowledge, then intellectual knowledge, then I think the other three, Pariyati, Patipati, and Pativeda, I got it. But then the first one is the knowledge, just theory. And I wonder, when Ajahn say there are two distinctions, there are many Dhamma that arise and falls away, but only one can appear. So I wonder if people can read just to understand or to have a knowledge of what arises and falls away as a preparation.
Now,
there is, but not known yet.
But if it hasn't arisen at all, can it appear?
No, not
So
cannot.
now what appears has arisen by conditions and fall away instantly. One seeing now appears, but no understanding of that which is seen or what is seen. That's why I learn to understand the truth of what is there in the absolute sense. That is seeing.
Yeah. What
is the truth of seeing?
It's just we can see.
It arises to see.
Yeah.
Is this not directly experienced yet?
Not at all.
Different stages of understanding.
Yeah. So for seeing, that is something that we, let's say, can have more confidence that it is there. But therefore something like...
It's there now. Do we need any confidence that it's there, seeing?
Well, I mean, if without understanding that they still would be doubt.
If you don't talk about it, do you have to think whether it's there, seeing?
No.
But when we talk about seeing, it conditions doubt whether it's there, seeing now, or no doubt. There is seeing, but no understanding of the truth of seeing, but it's gone. When it arises, it sees and then fall away, never to return at all. Just learn to understand the absolute truth. Gradually, little by little, to have firm confidence of the truth, that actually seeing cannot be I see or anyone see at all. It just arises to see and then it's gone. It's not true, only that firm confidence of the truth of what is there now. What if someone says seeing does not it's not gone at all? It's still there, right or wrong?
Wrong.
Mm-hmm. Firm confidence of the truth.
We call this right careful considering, we call it pariyati, and panya has to be there. If it's just repeating the words or if it's just remembering what is in the book, it's not pariyati. So it has to be the actual understanding that there is seeing now with confidence. In translation, we sometimes refer to this as intellectual understanding, different from theoretical theoretical knowledge when there's no panya, when it's just like a scholar learning the details and numbers. But even the term intellectual understanding in English is misleading because actually, it's not a very good term, because in English, it sounds like theory, it sounds like theoretical understanding, the same. So it's not a very good translation, but it's just referring to the pariyatti understanding, which is the panya, which understands the truth about what is real now, but not yet the direct understanding, which is patipatti. That's all.
I guess my question was more about the theoretical understanding, not understanding the theoretical knowledge, rather than the pariyat as the intellectual, because there, for example, people may ask about when Ajahn asks what is there, then I guess if there will be some language or some details that might not arise, but then by reading, for example, but for the first time, that one may understand that there's such details actually, in exist. So even though that is theoretical understanding or theoretical knowledge, I think just my point is whether understanding that or having that knowledge will actually help, or help to put in the context of what when Ajahn talk about what arises and what falls away, because there are many of them, they are not really directly known yet, and maybe not arise at all in this lifetime.
So if there's trying to find the gray line between what is intellectual understanding and theoretical understanding now, it's Loba again now that's trying to find out, wanting to pinpoint. But in general, we can say that if it is just memorizing the numbers or the citas and the sense door process without any understanding about what is true now, without any careful reflection about the dhammas which are anatta now, then it's just book study like a child can learn at school. It could be any academic subject. And some people are expert at Pali and have memorized all the Abhidhamma texts and can recite them at funerals, but it can just be theoretical knowledge, no understanding at all about Dhamma as anatta now. So only the understanding can know now when one is talking, for example, about sense door and mind door processes, or about the span of life and death. Only understanding can know whether there's really any true understanding now, or whether it's just a long story about the teachings.
And I think we can say it depends on the mind of the person, because a person who has no interest in the Dhamma for its value, but just as an academic study, for example, everything is just book knowledge for them, theoretical knowledge, and it has no relevance or application to the present moment. But a person who is interested in the Dhamma and studying the Dhamma can also be reading information which they don't necessarily relate directly to the present moment, but is sort of background information. For example, that there are 52 jetasikas, just as an example. And that person, because of their interest in the Dhamma, they find it something that, a piece of information that they might find useful at some point, but it's just, at this point, it's still just theoretical knowledge for the person. but it may be useful, for example, in a discussion, and so you can follow the meaning, follow what's being said, that kind of thing. So I don't think we can generalize. I think it depends very much on your basic question is theoretical information, does it support the development of intellectual understanding? So I think it depends on whether it's intellectual, whether it's theoretical information that is coming to the mind of someone who's interested in the Dhamma or not.
Got it clear. Yeah. On the other hand, I think some might argue, like some discussions we had some months earlier with a lady who thought that knowledge, that theoretical knowledge, is necessary for her to understand what is being said in the discussions. And at that time, we discussed with her, and we said that it doesn't really matter whether you have all those knowledge or not, but if you understand what is now as being real, as being no one, and that is the more important thing. I think that I
think I remember the discussion, and that's why actually the understanding now, it all comes back to understanding now, like when one's thinking about whether there should be more study of the details or not. What is the chitta now? What is it that's thinking? Is it I wondering whether I should open the book or not, instead of just understanding the seeing now as conditioned, thinking now as conditioned, confidence or lack of confidence now as conditioned. Otherwise, at the back of one's mind, it's the story of I, what should I be doing? Should I learn more details? Instead of just understanding what appears now. Or by different conditions, different accumulations.
Yes, I don't disagree with any of that, and I don't think there's any contradiction between what I said and what has just been said following that, because the question wasn't, should I try to acquire more theoretical knowledge? The question was simply, can theoretical knowledge be useful? And I can think of some ways in which it might be helpful. For example, it is said that there are just conditioned dhammas. And that may be a very difficult concept for people to wrap their mind around until they hear some of the detail of what those conditioned dhammas are and how they operate in a sequence, and how they are related to each other by certain conditions, and how the experience through the sense door happens, and then through the mind door there's thinking about the sense door object, and so on and so forth. And all of that information may help to prevent some mental blocks that would otherwise make it difficult for the person to just think about the reality of the present moment.
Hello to those at home who've just joined. And this is a better time for you. Is there anything you'd like to bring up or ask Ajahn or anyone?
In order to understand how much understanding of the teachings of the Buddha, it has to be now, whether it's just only theoretical knowledge or the intellectual understanding of the truth, or it is moment of insight, reality right now, different degrees. So if someone asks, what is Buddhism? And the answer is the teachings of the Buddha, the knowledge, theoretical, what he taught about. Ariya Satya, for Ariya Satya, sometimes people just know that. They don't understand, but they remember about what Buddha taught about the Ariya Satya, and they can recite the first, the second, the third, and the fourth. But what is the path? No understanding. So now we learn a little more to understand that, what Buddha taught concern what is there now to be understood as it hasn't been understood before. For example, Dhamma. See, they remember learning Pali, what's the meaning of Dhamma. But what is Dhamma now? See, not just the Buddha taught about Dhamma, but what is a Dhamma now to be known? That is his teaching about that which is there now, sees or hears. For example, even the very simple question, but there cannot be the right answer. For example, what is there now? You ask anyone, they don't know at all what is there. But even now, what is now is not known. But it can be in the book about 5 khandhas, that which arises and falls away, the past, the future, and the present, and so on. They recite it. They think that they understand the meaning of it, but not understand what is there now, what khandha now. That's why just the knowledge of theoretical knowledge is not enough. It's only follow the book and the word theoretically. But when it's intellectual understanding, not just the word, but the truth of each word, and Panya understand the truth clearly. It's not the moment of directly understanding the nature of that which is now, as Buddha taught. So it has to be now, and Panya knows how much understanding. For those who recite, there are 89 types of citta, the 52 Cetasikas and Rupa, just the word. So they have doubt, and doubt is there for anyone who hasn't realized the truth yet. For example, citta is so very familiar. It experiences an object, but who knows now it is experiencing just one very tiny moment. So what is experience of tiny? That it can impinge on the eye base. And when it appears through sense door, the mind also experience that. Who knows about the process from sense door to mind door and sense door and mind door now? That's why we understand that actually it's not just to be remembered, just to be recited, but to understand one reality at a time when it's there. And now there is citta, who does know that seeing now is citta, but it's I see. How come to understand the nature of that which has no shape, no form at all, and it cannot be experienced through sense though? Who can experience citta, to see it, hear it, smell it? No, no taste, no smell. That's why learning to understand that the very subtle reality that it's not far away from this moment. It's just right there now, no matter what Buddha taught about that which is there now, to be known more and more about its true nature, that it cannot be anything at all, because it's conditioned to arise and falls away instantly. Even right now, who knows? That's why I have firm confidence of the truth. Otherwise, there will never be the moment of realizing the true nature of the truth. Different stages of understanding, no matter by what degree. Even the degree of intellectual understanding, see, different levels, deeper or very superficial. each degree, it has to be by different moments, different levels, develop on and on gradually to understand what is there now, because it's there now. If this moment is not known, the understanding of the truth build up little by little, develop little by little to understand what is there in the future by conditions. Is this theoretical knowledge?
When there's no understanding of what's happening now, it's theoretical knowledge.
When it's only
I mean, if there's no any understand for what's happening now, it's theoretical knowledge. Even that, what Achan said is about Dhamma, but no understanding.
it's only concept. That's why it is. And it's only concept. That's why it is theoretical knowledge. Yes.
That makes me think about what yesterday I had a conversation with Achan, in which I mentioned that many teachers teach the Abhidhamma, and they also teach about visible object and sound and everything, but it's not, there's no understanding that visible object is no one or no thing. And at that moment, Achan said that it is because they just read the words and they don't consider the words to understand what that means, what it is. And I think that's the key thing. And we don't appreciate that enough, that each word is to be understood at the moment is there. So unless we have that understanding in mind, that whatever we read in the book is to be understood, I think that can be easily become just some knowledge of the word without any real understanding at all.
And I think for that kind of person, they have acquired the knowledge, but they've not really considered the true meaning. And they probably put it in the too hard basket. I don't know, because maybe they appreciate that it's something other than what is normally considered to be seen, but exactly what they haven't thought through. So no appreciation of the significance of the understanding of the visible object. I think this is a stumbling point for many people. We often hear people say, well, why do you talk so much about visible object? There's just no appreciation that that's also taken for self. And everything taken for self has eventually to be known as not self. Yeah, so.
I always find that Ajahn reminding us that it's now, it's there now, is the key. It's still intellectual understanding, but it gives the intellectual understanding a purpose. That one can down the road, when there are conditions, there can be conditions to know more directly. And I know Ajahn has been talking about now for a long, long time. And it sometimes takes a long time to sink in, but I hear it more and more now. It's there now. That's
Yes,
what
I agree with that sentiment, Anne, and I find the same thing. And it's there now doesn't mean that it's being understood.
right.
It's useful to know that it's not yet being understood, or it's not at the moment being understood, and there's something else there that hasn't been appreciated.
Yeah.
And someone says that I now get less attachment to the object which is seen. It's only visible object. See, so quickly the I is there all the time, not understanding the subtlety of the teachings of the Buddha about realities at all.
Mhm.
May say, I've heard about seeing invisible object for a long time. I don't need to hear about these realities. And it's more important to improve the character, to have less lobha and less dosa. So it's the same. We don't appreciate how very deeply rooted the sense of I, the idea of I is. Wanting a particular experience, wanting to have this kind of character in subtle ways, trying to have less attachment and aversion. But what about the ignorance now?
Mm.
I think it's very subtle between intellectual understanding and theoretical knowledge, because I think there's very few moments that there's understanding arise, and it's very slowly. So that's why many people seem to be understand, but then they change the way, like they think that they should be to do something to have more understanding.
It's the idea of doing or practice is so strong. They would like a change. They would like some quicker result, like in the discussion yesterday when we were talking about different kinds of behavior, and one would like to change this behavior, or one would like one's friends to change this behavior. But as Jan said, the biggest problem is the moha now, the ignorance now, because if there's no understanding of Dhamma, whatever one tries to do, it won't have the result one would like, because it's all with the idea of I that can control, not the understanding of Dhamma. So the lack of understanding now has to be known, and it has to come back to this moment, not what happened yesterday or the angry outburst 2 weeks ago or the habit yesterday of eating too much. It has to be this moment now.
When Achan said, are they seeing now? Yes, confident that they're seeing now, but they doubt about that the seeing can be understood.
So at moment of seeing and say, it's seeing, not me. It's not the understanding of seeing. Right?
Say there's seeing now because something visible appears. So it's an assumption, isn't it? That the moment of actual seeing is not known. But we can assume it must be there. That's it. As you say, no direct understanding. And it's not something that can be made to happen, that understanding. It just arises by conditions, but it needs to hear the truth about the way things are, and that truth needs to be considered and reflected upon. And the significance of understanding needs to be appreciated.
Is this a good time to ask a question? Okay. I heard yesterday's recording I guess today maybe. Anyway, Jonathan was talking about vitaka and vichara, and pointing out that they touch the object of thinking. They aren't the thinking, that it's the citta that thinks. Is that an accurate piece of feedback? That's what I'd like to talk about more, actually.
Just to slight further bit of detail, they touch the object, whatever the object is, whether
Yes.
it's a concept, whether it's
Concept
a thought, or
or-
whether it's a reality, they touch
Mhm.
the object.
Right. And the citta thinks. I guess I'm going back to before I realized that the vitaka and vichara didn't actually think. But can you talk more about thinking then, please? You or Sarah or John?
I'll just say a few words briefly. We all know what thinking is,
Yeah.
especially of the discursive kind, like thinking about yesterday or tomorrow, planning next move, etc. That's thinking, not related to what's appearing at the present moment, right?
Right.
And then there's thinking of what is being experienced through the sense doors at the present moment. So
Right.
Understanding what's being said involves a lot of thinking, because it's just sound that's experienced at the ear door, no meaning in the sound at that point. So there's a lot of moments of thinking that understand the meaning of what's being said, and the same through the eye door.
Through all of the sense doors.
So those moments, we could also say, generally come under the general heading of thinking, I suppose, because they're just mind door moments. But the term thinking is not one from the texts. I mean, that's the term we are using to refer to these mind door moments that are not directly experiencing a reality. Concept as object.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. I guess I found myself surprised that it was citta that thinks and not vitaka and vichara, but that's, yeah. Thank you.
What I'm going to say is that when you seeing consciousness arise, and seeing the consciousness is a leader of seeing, and the Chetasika are the mental factor. But when we say seeing consciousness, Chitta is seen. Chetasika, they are not seen, but they know the same object. According to the Chetasika, they perform their own function.
Right.
At the moment of seeing, no vitaka at all. Following the seeing, the next citta, sampaticca, santirana, votapana, vitaka has to arise. The sampaticca receives the object, doesn't think, it receives the visible object. Santirana investigates that visible object, and the vitaka has to be there touching the object for the citta to perform its particular function. And when the kusala and akusala cittas arise in the sense door process, vitaka is there touching, but the object is visible object. So we don't talk about these cittas as thinking cittas. They're kusala or akusala cittas rooted in ignorance or attachment, or if it's kusala, in wholesome roots, experiencing the visible object, but they need vitaka to touch it. In the mind door process, the mind door adverting consciousness also needs the vitaka to touch the object. The mind door adverting citta, it doesn't think, it adverts to the object in order for the subsequent kusala or akusala cittas to perform their function of jhana. And as Jonathan said, when the object is a concept, then usually we say these cittas are thinking about the concept, and vitakka is a important factor touching that object for the citta to think about it. Sanya has to mark and remember, vitakka has to touch it. Without vitakka, there couldn't be any thinking. So sometimes it's translated as thinking, but actually the citta is the leader in thinking about that concept, but the vitakka has to be there performing its function. And if it is a reality that is experienced, the nimitta of a reality, still vitakka has to touch it. But usually we then talk about, for example, at a moment of understanding of the nimitta of reality, usually we may not say that it's thinking citta at that moment. So it's just, in short, like for people who are new to the Dhamma, we just say if there's not seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, there is thinking, because most of the day there is thinking. So it's referring to all those mind or cittas that think about different ideas, different stories, different dreams. But to be precise, we have to go a little deeper.
That makes sense. Vitakka is not pasa. It touches the object, and pasa contacts it.
Right. Like they give one example of mounting, like mounting a horse. Like the citta cannot experience the object unless vitakka has touched it or mounted it. So it is that's why even in the development of the path, sama sankappa has to be there, the right vitakka, in order for right understanding to arise.
Okay. And pasa is more just like a little tap.
So there has to be a different function. So without pasa contacting the object, every object, even at the moment of seeing or hearing, without it contacting that object, there cannot be seeing. So it depends on what pasa contacts as to what is seen at that moment, what is heard. So pasa is an important ingredient, a nutriment for seeing to experience the object, and for the other cetasikas to experience the object. So they can condition in different ways with different functions.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. That's a big help. Thank you.
So somehow thinking is like a concept too, because it's the whole process.
Thinking is reality, but the concept that is thought about is the idea. But the citta itself, like now at the moment of thinking, the citta which thinks is real. If without citta thinking and experiencing the object, there couldn't be any idea or any dream or any discussion at all. So the thinking is real. The cetasikas that arise with it, the vitakka and so on, they are real. But the idea, the tablecloth, the people in the room, these are the ideas, the dreams, the fantasies, not the realities. So there has to be the distinguishing between the reality that experiences, the reality that thinks about the object, and the idea that is thought about.
Yes, the conventional notion of thinking is a concept. But we are using the term to refer to certain jittas. And as Sarah said, it's really the jittas, other than those that experience an object at the sense door, in broadly speaking. So therefore, it's a label for certain realities.
Yeah, because in the mind process, or for thinking is we cannot pinpoint a particular citta that performs the function of thinking. It's just the vitakka who perform its function.
There's no function of thinking. The jitta that thinks experiences a concept. So now you're thinking about what's just been said, and that those jittas have thoughts as their object. And they are accompanied by vitakka as one of the jetasikas. And we have to remember that these jetasikas, like contact and vitakka and so forth, they arise with the jitta, together with the jitta that experiences the object. So they're not precursors. They don't come in advance of the jitta. They arise together with the jitta and have a function to perform at that moment. Just like the concentration and the contact and the vitakka, which we call thinking. And I wish there was a better term for it, because people get very much the wrong idea about it, but it strikes or mounts the object. Difficult for us to conceptualize what that means, because, as I say, they all rise together with the jitta and just there for a moment and then gone. So have to appreciate that they have to have a name. They each perform a function, but for us to think of these functions in terms of conventional terms like thinking and contacting and concentrating on is difficult.
We pinpoint anything now
No,
or anytime?
no. But I mean, usually in the sense thought process, there will one chitta like vipaka chitta, which is a particular one that perform its function, like for seeing, hearing, but for thinking it's different. So it's hard to understand.
Javana. So just like in the sense door process, there are kusala and akusala chittas that experience the object. So in the mind door, it's just as in the mind door, the object can be a reality or a concept. So when it's a concept, it's an idea. It's not visible object. It's an idea about visible object. But the kusala citta is performing the same function of javana, no matter in the sense door or the mind door process.
I think what Sarah said earlier is that vitakka has an important role because it mounts the object so that the citta can think about. So that is the role of vitakka at the moments when it arises with citta and in the mind-door processes.
On the question of pinpointing, we have to keep in mind, of course, that it's not necessary to identify all these things we're talking about. The task is to have a better understanding of whatever appears at the present moment. And if something never appears, then it's never going to be the object of awareness and understanding. So we don't have to be too concerned about getting to a full understanding of these things and worry about whether or not they can be experienced.
So now if there's trying to understand or trying to pinpoint what is the reality now, understanding the reality now, what appears now is more important than getting the story right. So seeing is now, doubt is now, thinking about the meaning, trying to understand. These are different dhammas. So it all comes back to this moment.
I find myself grappling a bit with again, it's an idea, with the sense objects, the citta experiences the sense object. The mind door, the citta experiences, let's say it's a concept, not a reality, experiences a concept. Yes, I'm finding that a little difficult. Jonathan, maybe that's what you said we shouldn't worry about. I guess I have to remember that experiences the concept at the same time as the Cetasikas do. So altogether, it results in something that we're calling thoughts.
Yes, I would say the Jetasikas experience at the same time as the Jitta does, because the Jitta is the leader, the chief in experiencing. Jetasikas support it.
About everything, Cetasikas and Chitta. Where are they now? See, talk about the mind, talk about thinking, moment of seeing. Without Chitta, nothing can arise at all. That's why we always forget to understand the reality which arises and experience an object as the chief of experiencing. There is concept, right? If Chitta does not experience it, can there be any concept? That's why forget about that, which is the chief of experiencing what is there now in every moment. No matter the reality which is seen without Chitta, which arises and experiences it, they cannot be what is seen right now at all. That's why just understand the true nature of a reality, which is the chief of experiencing from birth to death every moment, to not just talk about it, but to understand it even at moment of thinking. What things, we can use that word, but it means what experiences the idea or concept. That's why at this moment, it is that reality which arises and experience that which is seen through eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. And when it's not through these 5 doorways, it's there. But not see, not hear at all, depending on conditions at that moment. If we don't use the word think, it's still there. Not seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. In order to begin to get closer and closer to what is that we used to think of it as not I, but it's Chitta. And when we talk about Vittaka, it's not the Chitta. It's not attachment, it's not aversion. But after seeing sees, seeing falls away, with a Vittaka, the next Chitta cannot experience that which is seen by seeing. That's why from then on, it's that what you care, what you say. The foot of the world keeps on walking, going, after seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. Just learn to understand the truth of each word Buddha taught about the absolute truth, the nature of it. That's why at moment of thinking, what is there? There must be the object of thinking appearing in mind, not as seen or heard, but thought about. And what things, it's Chitta. We can say that. Even if you don't use the word think, it's there, experiencing. It experiences. Whenever it arises, it experiences. No moment in life that there is no Chitta. There must be Chitta, but it's not known. We just talk about seeing, see, but what sees? And we use the term Chitta, intellectual understanding. Before it can be directly experienced as no one, no thing, no Cetasika, no Rupa at all. So what is there? The reality which experiences only. Nothing is there together. And it has to be through mind. Seeing cannot see it, hearing cannot hear it because it's not sound, it's not visible object. That's why learn to have firm confidence of the truth of each reality as it is, the chief of experiencing, no matter any time, no matter what object is there. It's there now, not close to know it yet. Even it's the innermost manayatana.
I think many of us wonder about the meaning of the fruit of the world. I think it would be helpful if you can explain further why it is the fruit of the world.
What are there after the moment of seeing?
Sampatichana.
Yes, without vitaka or with vitaka.
With vitaka.
And the other moment after sampatichana?
Santirana.
Without or with vitaka?
With. So
keep on, go on.
And that's how the world appears as people and things, right? That's the meaning.
It means just that it is the support, the basis for those citas to arise. So the world just means each moment of experiencing. So for all those moments of experiencing, there has to be that base. Like the foot, there cannot be walking without the foot. And so there cannot be the experiencing without that vitaka, which is the foot, the support for experiencing what appears. Like in the Eightfold Path.
Vitaka, but not another, for example, virya must be there too, but why virya is not the fruit of the world?
I think I can suggest an answer to that question. I've come across a commentary note which says that the word vitaka has another meaning, and that is to travel.
Okay.
Travels to this object, to that object, to mounts each object along the way.
Okay.
And also, like in the Eightfold Path, it's vitaka, the samasankappa, that is the foot for understanding to experience the object. It's part of the understanding component. Without samasankappa, right understanding, samaditi, cannot arise. And like we were talking about, when there's thinking, vitaka plays an important role.
Yes.
Mounting that object which the thinking thinks about.
That's.
I have read that it's a cheetah that is full of the world, because cheetah are the leader of knowing the objects.
Foot of the world refers to vitaka.
Thank you.
I'll try and find that commentary note and post it.
Any word just to be understood, not just to follow the word. So without vitaka, only seeing consciousness with 7 cetasikas and then gone. How come for other moment follow seeing to experience the object if there's no touching the object?
Yes, I do understand that, but I read, right? That was, I thought it was cheetah.
It doesn't matter, because as long as there can be the understanding of the truth, otherwise we follow the word, but what about understanding?
Pada is often used when talking about the proximate cause for something. So the proximate cause is like the foot for that arising, like when jhana is the basis of attainment, it is the foot. So in that sense, any reality can be the proximate cause. Or when we were talking the other day about the 3 kinds of manasikara and the sense-adverting consciousness, which is the viti pada padika manasikara. It's like the foot of the process that follows and the mind or adverting consciousness is the foot for the subsequent kusala or akusala citas that follow.
And before I came across that commentary note, I had my own version of the explanation. And that is this, that when someone is walking, if you're looking at them side on, it's the foot that leads the way first. The foremost part of the individual walking is the foot. And it strikes the ground, and then the rest of the body follows, and then another foot appears. That was
And from here to there,
I'm going to write my own commentary.
from seeing to at the moment, Vitaka is there, touch the object for the next moment to experience that object.
Ajahn, I think you asked a minute or two ago about Vitaka is not one of the Jetasikas when the sense door objects are experienced.
Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching experience, but the other citas in the process experience the sense of it. Yeah.
Yes.
Vitaka.
Right. And I don't know whether you were querying or asking us why it seems that Vitaka is not necessary when the Jita experiences the sense door objects. Is that because the contact is directly with the object?
And just to clarify, all the citas in the sense door process experience the sense door object, but only seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching don't need Vitaka. The other citas, they experience the sense object. And
I actually
need Vitaka. Yeah.
I've got that. I've been stating it incorrectly myself. Yes, that's what I was thinking. Thanks, Sarah.
In seven citas in the process, so 16 we has to go with Vitaka, except seeing.
Actually, Vitaka does not arise with the 10 citas. Two kinds, kusala vipaka, kusala vipaka, seeing.
Depends how many more citas there are in the process, but they all need Vitaka. For example, sometimes Tadaramattas, sometimes not. Sometimes the process may be cut, but they all need Vitaka other than those 10.
From seeing to Sampatijana, it needs Vitaka.
And I think your question, was it why the 10 don't need Vitaka? Was that your question?
Yes.
I think that as I've heard, the citas are weaker. They don't need so many Cetasikas to arise with them. They only need 7, just the results of karma, experiencing the object. They don't need so many factors at all, but following, seeing, more factors are needed to experience the object.
But the
10 are weaker, so they don't need so many factors to experience the object. They're just vipaka citas, which just see or hear what has already arisen. For example, moment of lobha, many cetasikas are needed to experience that object with lobha, or when it's kusala, more again, many more.
I'm not sure, weaker and stronger in what sense? Because the citta in the second jhana, second or third jhana, it doesn't need Vitaka to experience because it's so acquainted to experience the object. So in what sense of weak and strong are you talking about?
So if we're talking about seeing, it's quite different from talking about jhana citta and why jhana citta doesn't need vitaka. That's a totally different case. But in the case of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching, they're vipaka cittas, not as much work to perform as, for example, kusala and akusala cittas. They don't need so many cetasikas in order to experience the object. But maybe Ajahn has more to say on this.
Smaller population.
That's why we use the usually. Vitaka arises with almost every citta, except the 10 generally. We don't talk about Rupajana or other states.
Do you have any comment about weaker or stronger?
The what?
Do you have any comment about weaker or stronger? Just Sarah comment before.
In what sense?
In what sense?
For example, seeing. Can it do anything? Just a moment of seeing, thinking about the truth. But it seems like it's there all the time in the day.
That it sees, we have to remember that in this context, that just means experiencing the visible object, a single visible object. So we wouldn't necessarily think of that as seeing, would we? Because there's no meaning to the visible object. At that stage, it's just a pleasant or unpleasant piece of visible data. So in that sense, it's the seeing is a very simplistic version of what we think of as seeing.
That's why the world doesn't appear as it is at all. Just a moment.
The Sampatichana, Santirana, they're also vipaka cittas, weak, they don't perform a function of kusala or akusala, but still they need a little more support to experience the object. They need vitaka, but not as many cetasikas as when kusala and akusala arises later. Just the way it is.
For all this information we just heard and exhibit, no any.
They can also be considering, what is the difference now between seeing the vipaka citta and the akusala that follows, and which is harder, the akusala or kusala. Kusala is harder, takes more factors to experience the object. So it's not just hearing, but there can be the considering about it.
So instead, I think I got something about all the explanation that you gave. But can you say like it's more passive? It's more passive. The vipaka cittas, the 10, it's as opposed to when there's vitaka. It doesn't work. It doesn't.
Just going back to Maya's comment for a minute, no one is saying that this information is necessary to be known, but people are curious, so they ask the question. So they like to think about these things, but it doesn't mean that there can't be awareness of seeing an invisible object without knowing this, having this information. So we have to consider it in that light, I think.
There are many type of citta. We know that when Kusala Chitta arise, they are more mental factor, more Chetasika, and Akusala is lesser than that, but still has the different kind of Kusala and Akusala, like Sangsarika or what you call the weak and the they have many different level also, and there is a kusala which is weak and strong, a kusala also weak and strong.
Talking about prompted and unprompted, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I think maybe what my comment is just, it means that it's so complicated. So we cannot like think about it or consider it's too complicated.
You don't need to say complicated. It's already complicated.
It is complicated. It's a great level of detail. It doesn't hurt to hear it. Don't feel you have to remember every detail though, because that spoils it. It should be something that's interesting to hear about without thinking that I should be able to know this and remember it and even see it.
But I think it's we don't know and we don't have expectations, but they are all the different aspects. So if we hear about them, there can be conditions for some more consideration. So who knows?
Yeah, you are right. It depends on my recommendation. Yes, you are right. It depends on accumulation, because when Sarah gives more information in details, I feel so difficult for me to keep thinking about that. So I just immediately I think just accept it. Yeah, that's my own feeling. Not right. Yes, not to show any idea about this.
Right. But no need to think, oh, just switch off. But just accept.
Like this detail, if someone doesn't ask, one won't mention it. But if someone asks why it has more factors, actually there are reasons, like just as there are reasons why the second higher jhanas don't need vitaka, but the first jhana does. So there are reasons, different conditions why it's not necessary. And so with seeing the reasons why it needs fewer cetasikas. But if one hears and it's just a condition for doubt and confusion and worry, then it's useless. But what appears now, seeing now, doubt now.
And what do you mean, I accept it?
I think is now when I think that I just is taught by Buddha, and many things I cannot pin out. So
but
maybe
is it true?
Yes, when I say I accept it, so it's true, right? Yes. Yeah.
Sarah says it should be true.
No, I think that when you say here and Ajahn no comment, so I think it must be very yes.
Yes, I think accept it means accept for the purpose of consideration. Accept the possibility that that's the case. And we cannot necessarily say it's true if there's no actual understanding. We can only say it's what the Buddha taught.
So accept the untruth.
Who knows? Possible.
No use. Just to accept whether it's true or not, but to understand the truth. It cannot be
Yes,
denied.
the key word there is understand
Mhm.
the truth.
It reminds me of one of the session in Vietnam when some person asked something and then it can't be find a clear answer for that. And I had a feeling that, okay, at that moment, there must be a leap of faith or kind of just to believe in that. But I'm not sure. It also on the other extreme that you have, okay, just accept it. Just, don't question about this anymore.
It's useless because one can accept anything without any understanding. Whether it's true or not, just accept it. No, it's not the teachings of the Buddha. And when it's true, no need to accept. To understand the truth is so true.
What about when things cannot be verified? For example, karma and vipaka or 17.7. These cannot be verified by our current understanding.
But Buddha didn't just say the word. What is there? Seeing is only one moment.
Mhm.
And after that, what condition what? Without vitaka, the next moment cannot share the object which seeing sees at all. That's why the reason for why after Sampatichana, there must be other moment too, not just to believe, but to understand the way it is. The Paccaya is there too. Just to let go ignorance, to understand a little more, a little more. Otherwise, there's only thinking, accepting, I believe, and so on.
I believe or I accept means it will be forgotten because it's not really understood or considered wisely. Like virya, someone mentioned virya. So we have to consider why virya doesn't arise, isn't necessary for 16 of the 18 ahetuka citas, and why it's necessary for the other 2. So not just seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching, but almost all the rootless citas, including the Sampatichana, Santirana, and if the Bhavanga citas are rootless in unhappy realm, why virya is not necessary. So we can say the ahetuka citas, these ahetuka citas, we could say are weaker, or just that they don't need the virya to arise to experience the object, the effort or energy to experience the object. So one can just consider for oneself why this might be so, and it helps one to understand more about the characteristic of virya that has to be there with all kusala and akusala and kusala vipaka citas, for example, why virya is needed with those citas. And I think it helps to understand about virya or vitaka as dhammas, as not self, why they arise under certain conditions with certain citas and not at other times. So very different from our conventional ideas of thinking and effort, for example. So it comes back to understanding a little more about what is virya at this moment of speaking, at moments of kusala and akusala, how there has to be virya at those times, but not anyone that makes an effort or anyone who thinks or strikes the object.
I totally agree with your saying about all what the content you discuss here is useful for wise consideration in many aspects. I totally agree that, but it's by condition, because sometimes I feel very interested in detail, but sometimes there's no more interested to keep thinking about much more detail. So in that case, sometimes you think, okay, that's fine, but there's no more condition for keep thinking
or by conditions. So like I mentioned to Tiny Tom, it's not a matter of pinpointing or trying to work it out. And it's what is appropriate at this moment to the understanding and the right considering now.
Yes.
So like if it is a beginner here, Ajahn will not discuss any details at all because it's not appropriate. It
Yes.
cannot be considered wisely because there's no understanding of even seeing or visible objects. So what's the use of talking about when vitaka arises? It's meaningless. So what is appropriate at one time may not be appropriate at another, or what the first time we came to Vietnam, what it was possible to consider is different from now. And if hearing and considering just is a condition for doubt and aversion, then okay, that's the reality.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
why
not a matter of trying to think more or trying to understand. I never set out to understand details or collect numbers, or I never read through any texts from page to page, but just a little more considering, and a little more understanding. That's all.
Yes, that's why I just comment that it's just very individual feeling at that moment. Yeah.
And what did Buddha say about that?
Sorry, about what?
Just you just talk about those moments. Sometimes this and sometimes.
And you mentioned about individual feeling at each moment. So Ajahn's asking what the Buddha said about that.
Ignorance? Maybe you want to mention about that.
He taught about everything to be understood as no one. But when you have such idea, see, no understanding of Dhamma at that very moment.
But how can I say this is thinking here is different the thinking
it doesn't
here.
matter what you say. The
I mean,
truth
that's very
is that
in the very moment, in different person at this moment, right?
yes, but what are there to be different from moment to moment? This is the way to understand Dhamma as it is.
Yes. Thinking by condition, right?
What condition can be known? And what other can be known gradually, little by little, not try to experience it, but to understand the truth, whether it's known or not.
Yes, no, you're right. Exactly.
Thinking, not my confusion, not my experience, just different dhammas, and always back to now. Right, exactly. Thai's problem, not the problem here.
Every time, happy. Ajahn, they're asking. Understanding now. Please, Ajahn, help me.
Lie in the hot seat and get out of it.
No Thai, different realities. Without understanding, there cannot be less ignorance and less akusala.
My experience and Thai's experience, just different dhammas now.
There can be the understanding of what is there in truth. To have more confidence and get closer to the truth. What is there now cannot be taken for I or anything at all. understanding what is the Paramatma and what is concept. And you think about Thai, right? Just a moment ago. What were there at that very moment thinking of Thai?
Yeah, at the moment when thinking of Thai, at some moment before, I think ignorant with akusala because
What were there at that very moment?
ignorance,
Kusala or akusala?
akusala,
Say
yeah,
his or yours?
just Dhamma.
But different ones.
Yeah,
Conventionally,
yeah, right.
So we mind the others akusala, but not mind about one's own akusala. That it's always there. Watching TV with akusala, commenting on and on with akusala, attachment or aversion all day, or even right now.
We all have accumulations to mind other people akusalas more than ours.
Get the truth, no one. Live alone.
everyone has been accumulate so many behavior, many things.
Minding others' business, others' problems, others' difficulties in life. But what about the citta now that thinks like this, that minds, that is disturbed by the others so much?
Very nice saying.
A very good discussion for Thai today.
Did you ask me again?
Again. Is it more useful to know?
Yeah. Unsuccessful.
Seems there's a lot of mana involved in minding others' accumulations for a kusala more than our own.
And what is the moment when we think that is by condition and we keep drinking?
Sorry, and we keep what?
Keep drinking alcohol.
Is this a question for John or for Thai?
For Thai.
Again, the question, please. Okay, I keep drinking.
Drinking alcohol.
Yeah, what's your question?
What was there when you have thought that it's by condition why you keep drinking alcohol?
For sure, that is wrong view and no understanding.
Isn't it true? Isn't it by conditions? The loba, those moments, the Ajan's pointing to you. Oh, everyone's
The speaker.
Isn't it true, like the loba now, no matter drinking this or drinking the alcohol, isn't it true that the liking, the clinging, the thinking, it's by conditions?
Yes, true.
Not by anyone's control at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Each moment by conditions. But I think your point is that we use it as an excuse. Like if I get angry and I say, well, it's just by conditions, or I tell a lie and I say it's by conditions, or I drink by conditions. But actually it's true that there are different dharmas arising by conditions.
And just remind about what Ajahn said. What is important? Understanding the Dhamma or the Loba. What is important? I just remind the right saying.
So we can understand the words whether it's from kusala or akusala, and understanding or without understanding.
We learn to understand or to remember the word.
To leave for lunch, I think. Okay. For those at home, we continue at 2:00 this afternoon. See you then.